Hey guys, tonight we drift off to sleep beneath a sky of shifting constellations, the air thick with the scent of plumeria and distant ocean spray. Tonight we slip quietly onto the shores of ancient Hawaii, where dusk means firelight flickering in thatched hail, and the only thing more mysterious than the hush of the palms is the chorus of stories lost to time. Picture yourself tiptoeing along moonlit sand, your bare feet leaving marks in a place where centuries of footsteps have come and gone. In the hush you might catch the ghost of a chant, a snatch of laughter, or maybe just the gentle warning of an ancestor whispering, "Don't stray too far, you probably won't survive this island night if you don't pay attention to the old stories." So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know your location and the local time. I'm always curious who's wandering these sleepy islands with me tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge slowly along the edge of a black sand beach, the waves curling at your ankles, cool and insistent, the air carrying the endless hum of insects and distant drums. Somewhere just beyond the reach of the firelight, the stories wait, old tales half remembered, sung or whispered, sometimes even lost. The thing about Hawaii, you quickly realize, is that it's a place built on memory as much as stone and sea. Even now, the breeze carries echoes of legends told and retold for centuries, then suddenly, sometimes shockingly, gone. The night is thick with possibility. You pause and listen. There's a quiet in the palms, a hush in the undergrowth, a stillness beneath the surface of the lagoon. It's the quiet of things, not just forgotten, but hidden. You get the sense that every shadow might conceal a story, every old tree another verse from an ancient chant, every swirl of wind the laughter or warning of a spirit just out of sight. The lost legends of Hawaii aren't merely buried under sand or washed away by rain. They're woven into the land, waiting for someone to listen closely enough to bring them back. But why are there so many stories missing? The islands are ancient, but the written record is young. Hawaiians for centuries kept their history and myth alive, not with books or ink, but with voice passed hand to hand, mind to mind, the way fire leaps from one torch to the next. You can almost see it, a ring of children at dusk. The oldest grandmother beginning a maiolelo, her hands painting pictures in the dark as the little ones lean closer, eyes wide. But even as her words float through the night, some slip away lost on the breeze, forgotten in the hush between generations. Historians still argue whether Hawaii's lost stories were victims of time, tide, or deliberate silence. Was it the arrival of new beliefs, the steady drumbeat of missionaries, or the hush imposed by alelai, who guarded secrets for themselves? Some say that old tales faded because they weren't needed anymore. Others insist that every legend has merely gone underground, waiting for the right dreamer or wanderer to call it back. Tonight you're one of those wanderers. As you walk, the sand is cool beneath your feet, and the moon is sharp, silvering the leaves. Every step is an invitation to look closer, to listen harder, to remember that even in the quietest places, nothing is ever truly lost. Maybe you'll stumble on a stone etched with forgotten petroglyphs, or hear a snippet of song carried over the waves. Maybe, just maybe, a lost story will find you first. The night is full of these little mysteries. Was there once a fisherman who spoke with sharks, whose tale was told for 100 years until it was swept away with the tide? Did a forgotten queen once save her village by bargaining with a volcano goddess? Her name never carved in stone, her legend dissolving into mist. For every legend written in modern books, there are 100 that drifted away on the wind, and sometimes you think, the land remembers even if the people do not. You wander through a grove of hala trees, their roots clutching at lava rock, and feel the weight of so many untold stories pressing in from the shadows. The old people believed the world itself was alive with memory, every stone, every wave, every breeze a keeper of secrets. Even now, the land is full of little hints. A cave sealed with stones, a trail that vanishes in the undergrowth, a pond that no one dares to enter after dark. Why? Sometimes the answer is just a shrug, a whispered no one remembers. Other times, it's a warning. That is a place of stories we do not tell. Here's a mainstream fact for your sleepy mind. Hawaiians called their stories mo'olelo, and these tales weren't just entertainment. They were the law, the map, the faith, the heart of every family and every chief. In the old days, knowing the right legend could mean the difference between life and death. The quirky truth. Some stories were never meant for outsiders, never spoken in daylight, or were reserved only for those who could prove their genealogy back through 20 generations of chiefs. If you think your family reunions are complicated, just wait until you have to recite every ancestor back to the days before the islands rose from the sea. Scholars debate whether the greatest stories were truly lost, or if they simply changed shape, becoming songs, dances, riddles, even place names that mean nothing to tourists, but everything to someone who remembers. There's a playful theory that the Menehune, the mythical little people said to have built fish ponds and temples in a single night, were once real, and that their greatest secret is a story so well hidden no one has ever managed to write it down. You keep walking, letting the hum of crickets and the rustle of pandanus leaves lull you onward. You find yourself passing through layers of time, a stone footpath here, a broken wall there, a glint of shell in the sand, each one a silent testament to stories told and then, somehow, forgotten. The irony, of course, is that even as we call them lost, these legends never really vanish. They hide, they sleep, they wait. Sometimes it takes a night like this, a listener like you, to remind the world that every forgotten legend is just a dream away from being found. So tonight, you let the mysteries settle softly over you, like mist on a moonlit sea. You close your eyes and drift, knowing that with every breath the island is whispering, "Remember, remember, remember." You find yourself beneath the soft sweep of dawn, the world tinted with the lavender glow of a new Hawaiian morning. Salt air brushes your face, warm and damp as you wander the rugged shore. Here the sand is speckled with shells and fragments of ancient coral, the very ground built on layers of stories washed up over centuries. Tonight, well, this endless night of storytelling, you'll glide back before chiefs and queens, back before even the first fire was kindled on these islands, to a time when the Pacific was nothing but blue mystery and the only legends that existed rode in on the sea. You picture a double-hulled canoe cutting through the swells. The first Polynesian navigators, bodies lean and strong, eyes sharp as a seabird, scan the stars, feel the pulse of currents, taste the wind for distant hints of new land. It's not just travel, it's creation. The Hawaiians' own stories begin here, in the open ocean, with nothing but instinct, memory, and an almost mythic sense of direction. Mainstream historical fact. Modern science has confirmed what Polynesian oral tradition always insisted. The early settlers found Hawaii using only natural cues, stars, bird migrations, the shape of clouds on the horizon, and the color of the water beneath the hull. Every movement in the canoe is a kind of prayer. Every chant a spell to summon the island before it appears. The names of the first to land, Papa and Wakea, the Earth Mother and Sky Father, are whispered into the night by kahuna and commoners alike. Yet, as you glide with them, you realize something haunting. For every name carefully kept, there are hundreds of navigators, dreamers and discoverers whose stories have vanished beneath the surf. Were there great voyages that left no trace? Historians still argue whether Hawaii was settled in a single epic leap, or over centuries of drifting and return, with families and their stories sometimes lost forever to the vast silent Pacific. You imagine the night sky crowded with meaning, the navigator's chant, a rolling tide of names and places sets the canoe's course. Each star, each constellation, is a living ancestor. Kikeo Makalii, the Baler of Makalii, leading the way. Oiwikoamo, the backbone of the sky. Children huddle in the canoe's shelter, eyes wide, as elders point upward and say, "Remember, if you ever forget the stars, you forget the way home." Quirky tidbit, in some traditions, each canoe had a guardian spirit, sometimes a shark, sometimes a bird, sometimes a stone, tucked beneath the lashing, that whispered advice or warnings to the navigator in dreams. Sometimes you catch the echo of those lost chants, a faint hum in the surf, a snatch of melody hidden in a breeze that smells of rain and far-off lands. These are the pieces of legend that didn't make it onto missionary paper or into the pages of modern textbooks. There's a tale of a woman who paddled a canoe guided only by the voice of her unborn child, or the brother and sister who became dolphins, their song echoing beneath the waves. Each time you try to remember their names, the memory slips, like wet sand through your fingers. You walk now through a grove of ironwood trees, needles sifting down in the morning hush. What stories were told here, long before English and even before the first Aliali carved out their sacred groves. You can almost see the shadow of a navigator, crouched by a smouldering fire, tracing the route from Tahiti or Samoa with a stick, the lines twisting through ash, as if mapping the journey in living memory. A reminder that the greatest maps of ancient Hawaii weren't inked onto tapa or stone. They were carried in the mind and the body, in the way a sailor stands, the rhythm of a chant, the taste of salt on the breeze. Historians still debate how much of that knowledge survived after the first generation. Did the earliest descendants of the navigators hold tight to every song and star name? Or did some lessons fade with each new island, each change in language or leadership? There's evidence. Scattered words, old prayers, half-remembered chants, the entire branches of ancestral lore quietly vanished, leaving gaps in the family trees that even today are hard to fill. There's a bittersweet magic in the fort. As you wander through morning mists, you're surrounded by reminders of what was gained and what was lost. You notice the stones set in ancient fish ponds, meticulously placed, echoing techniques found all across Polynesia. Each rock, a word in a vanished sentence. You stumble over a shell pendant, glinting in the shallows, and wonder whose story it once carried. You pause to watch a flock of kola, the Pacific golden plover, arriving as they have every season for centuries. Were they once considered messengers? In one legend, a plover guided a lost canoe to shore. But the ending is missing, the name of the hero gone. The loss is not always sad, though. Sometimes it's a gentle mystery, an invitation. As you walk, you feel the soft weight of not knowing. Not every story needs to be found. Some are meant to return in dreams, or in the sudden hush that falls when the wind changes. Sometimes a new legend begins right where the old one left off. No ending, just another beginning disguised as a sunrise. You end this stretch of your journey by the mouth of a stream tumbling into the sea, the water clear and cool, the banks overhung with ferns, and the roots of giant trees. Here, the first navigators may have landed, the first stories may have been spoken, the first legends may have slipped quietly into the island's hearts. You listen, and in the hush, you might almost hear them, voices on the wind, names on the tide, lost but never truly gone. The sun is barely up, and you're weaving through the morning hush, drawn to a secluded glen, where the ordinary world feels thin, where a person with sharp ears and slow steps might just overhear the secrets of the kahuna.
This is no simple village priest or healer you're spying on, but the sacred keeper of Hawaii's mysteries, the one tasked with guarding wisdom, so potent it's whispered only at midnight, if at all.
Here, you're not just an observer, you're an intruder in the gentle shadows, where knowledge is both a gift and a shield. You crouch quietly in the dew-wet grass, listening as the wind threads through the twice plants and the birds tune their dawn chorus. In the days before writing came to the islands, knowledge wasn't shared with the turn of a page or the passing of a book. It was hidden, encoded, and carefully parcelled out to those worthy and ready, the kahuna priest, healer, navigator, craftsman, sometimes all at once, wove their authority from the sheer power of knowing what others did not. And more often than not, what they knew was never written, never even spoken in full. Mainstream historical fact. In old Hawaii, the kahuna formed an elite, highly respected class, responsible for everything from tracking the weather to healing wounds, from reading omens in bird calls to remembering the genealogy of the chiefs. In some traditions, there were dozens of distinct kahuna roles, each guarding a specific branch of knowledge. Some were midwives, others master canoe builders, still others keepers of the ritual chants that could summon rain, or, so it was believed, hold back the tide of disaster. Their secrets were handed down, not openly, but through strict apprenticeship and ritual, with new knowledge hidden in riddles, proverbs, or the slow choreography of hands weaving lahala mats. But for every piece of knowledge passed on, countless secrets vanished with the last breath of a kahuna who deemed the next generation unworthy, unready, or simply unlucky. That's the first strange paradox you notice. In a society obsessed with remembering, forgetting was sometimes deliberate. Quirky tidbit: some rituals required the kahuna to recite a prayer or chant backwards to seal it away from unworthy listeners. A practice said to twist the story into knots, so tight even the gods might not unravel them. There are whispered tales of entire chants, so dangerous they were only performed during eclipses or in deep caves, and more than one legend warns of the consequences for anyone foolish enough to listen in.
You sneak a look from your hiding spot as an elder kahuna instructs an apprentice. Their voices are low, a murmur below the wind, and their gestures seem almost choreographed. The hand draws a spiral in the dust. A stone is turned 3 times. A branch of mail is set carefully atop a pile of black sand. You realize that this is a language, the secret language of doing, as much as saying.
It's a language of objects, of rituals, of silences, where meaning hides. Historians still argue whether this hidden curriculum was designed to protect knowledge from enemies, or simply to make it more precious to those who earned it. Was it about survival in a world of rival chiefs and invading war parties, or was it an ancient impulse to make the most powerful truths accessible only to those willing to seek them? Some scholars insist that much of what's lost was never actually forgotten, just hidden so well that it survives only in the smallest gestures and the most fleeting glances between teacher and student. You shift position and the apprentice glances over, but the lesson continues. There's a lesson here for you too. In this world, the most valuable things are never handed out freely. The secret of a healing plant, the method for reading the currents, even the stories of the gods. These are all treasures, doled out one at a time, and always at a price. A single misremembered chant, a word said at the wrong moment, could bring bad luck or worse. The old people joke that the most dangerous words in Hawaii are "I heard this from someone who heard it from someone else." But not all is serious. Kahuna, like any other group, have their quirks and rivalries. There's a half-serious tradition of riddles exchanged at gatherings, each one more obscure than the last. What has a mouth but never speaks, a back but never stands, and a path that leads only to forgetting? Asks one, his eyes dancing. The answer, depending on who you ask, is a river, a chant, or maybe even a secret itself. It's not all power and mystery, though. You notice the softer side, how the kahuna bless the morning's catch, how they help a mother with a sick child, how they lead quiet rituals for rain during a parched summer. Some knowledge is shared freely, woven into lullabies or morning prayers, so gently that you don't realize you've learned something until much later. Yet, even here, there's always more left unsaid than revealed. You walk deeper into the grove, the leaves closing in above, the light shifting and dappled. Here, the world is half seen, half felt. You find yourself imagining the knowledge that's gone forever, a healing song that soothed fevers, but was lost with the last true singer, a prophecy recited only once beneath a blood-red moon. There's a quiet ache in knowing that not every secret will ever be found, but also a kind of relief. Some things are meant to remain wild, untamed, passed from world to world without being pinned down. Historians still debate the fate of the kahuna's secret books. Some say that after missionaries arrived, a few priests recorded their wisdom on hidden scraps of paper or bark, hoping to preserve what could not be spoken aloud. Others claim that the true records remain oral, tucked into the rhythm of chants and the hidden meanings of ancient dances, waiting for the right listener to unlock them. You emerge from the grove at last, the world suddenly brighter and noisier. A breeze carries away the last echoes of the secret language, but something lingers. You can't help but wonder what small gesture, what odd word or rhythm, might hold the last spark of a legend, nearly lost. Maybe, you think, you're already carrying more than you realize, bits of wisdom passed down, without your even noticing, waiting for the moment when the world quiets enough to remember. You wander away from the sacred grove, feet padding softly on cool, dew-slick grass, and follow the low thrum of voices toward a cluster of old hail, where the art of mo'olelo, the telling of stories, blooms with every breath. It's not a formal lesson, not a priestly ritual, but something far more essential, the nightly pulse of the village, the living heartbeat of the Hawaiian world. Here, stories aren't locked away in books or scrolls. They flicker in the lamplight, pass from mouth to ear in the hush between waves, growing and changing like the vines curling up the rafters. You settle in, near a circle of children gathered close around their eldest tutu, whose skin is creased like old tapa cloth, and whose eyes glimmer with the mischief of 100 remembered stories. She doesn't clear her throat or announce the theme for the evening. She begins, and the mo'olelo weaves itself around you, pulling you gently into a world where the line between fact and myth is thinner than a shadow at dusk. Mainstream historical fact: in pre-contact Hawaii, there was no written language, so all knowledge, genealogies, laws, chants, riddles, and stories was preserved and transmitted orally. This wasn't just a way to pass the time, it was survival. A forgotten name could mean a broken claim to land. A misremembered chant could bring bad luck or disaster. The whole village, from the youngest child to the oldest kapuna, learned by heart, not just with their minds but with their voices, their bodies, their laughter and gasps. This wasn't just history, it was rehearsal for life itself. Tonight, Tutu's voice is soft as she tells of a chief who lost his shadow to a clever eel. She describes the eel so vividly that you almost see its glistening back in the moonlight, feel the shiver of scales beneath your feet. She pauses, lets the silence hang, and you realize she's not just reciting, she's inviting you to see, to guess, to wonder. Storytelling here is an art of suspense, a dance of clues and surprises. Quirky tidbit: sometimes the children try to guess the ending, and if they get it wrong, Tutu adds a twist, making the lesson just a little harder to unravel next time. The rhythm of her speech is almost hypnotic. Words repeat, echo, swirl. Sometimes the tale slips into chant, melee rising and falling with the crash of distant surf. The boundaries between listener and teller blur. A child leans in, repeating the chief's cry, and suddenly everyone's part of the legend. The story isn't just told, it's enacted, replayed, embodied, until the listeners are as much the keepers as the teller. Sometimes the story breaks for a joke. He was so hungry, his ribs played music every time he sneezed, and laughter peals across the circle. Other times, a hush falls, as a warning is woven in. Don't cross the river after midnight, unless you want to meet the eyes of the night marcher. You feel the hair on your arms lift as if someone brushed past you in the dark. Historians still argue whether Mo'olelo changed with each telling, or if the old masters held every word as sacred and fixed. Was it memory or improvisation? Was the role of the storyteller to preserve or to create anew? Some scholars claimed the flexibility was key to survival. Stories changed shape to fit the time, the teller, the need. Others insist that the most important chants and genealogies were guarded with fierce exactness, recited at ceremonies and judged by those who knew every syllable.
You find yourself drawn to the fringes of the circle, where older children whisper secret endings to each other, versions of the tale, passed down in family, sometimes changed to make a misbehaving cousin the butt of the joke, sometimes spun into cautionary warnings about stealing bananas or getting caught by a jealous moa.
The best storytellers know how to read the crowd, how to drop a wink, how to draw out a lesson, without ever making it sound like a scolding. Story is discipline and delight, memory and play. But not every story is told for everyone. Some tales are reserved for adults, others only for certain families, and a few for alalai alone. In rare moments the Mo'olelo halts mid-sentence, and Tutu simply shakes her head. "That is not our story to tell," she whispers, and the children fall silent. The power of oral tradition is as much about what is left out as what is spoken. In some families, stories are never told before midnight, or not at all during certain moons. Historians still debate why certain legends fell silent. Was it taboo, loss, or fear that drove them underground? You look around and realize the Mo'olelo is everywhere. It's in the names of the hills and streams, in the proverbs the farmers mutter as they plant taro, in the songs that lull babies to sleep. There are stories about rain, about how to read a pig's squeal for weather, about stones that walk on their own, and fish that vanish if you break a promise. Some are wild and silly, some grave and sacred, all carried on the living breath of the people. There's a running joke in the village that if you want to get out of chores, just ask an elder for the story behind a rock. You'll get a tale so long, the sun will set before the work begins. As the fire burns low, you feel a deep comfort. In this world, nothing is truly lost as long as someone remembers. Every retelling is a rescue, a restoration. The children drift asleep, curled like shrimp, still whispering lines from the story as they dream. You realize that even if legends vanish, the impulse to tell and retell Mo'olelo remains, shaping new tales in every generation. You pull your blanket close and feel the gentle press of the night around you, as if 1,000 stories are just waiting to be told, or maybe already whispered in the quiet rhythm of the waves. You wake to the sweet, smoky scent of tie leaves steaming in an emu, and the faint crash of distant surf. Morning sun slants through the palms, gilding the sleeping village.
You stretch and shuffle down to the water's edge, still half lost in dreams where gods and mortals walk the land together, where every glimmer of sunlight on a wave could be the glint of a forgotten goddess's eye. It's a world where reality and myth braid so tightly you almost forget which is which. You wade into the surf, letting the cold water chase sleep from your limbs.
You're not alone. All around the islands, from Taro Patch to Volcano's Edge, Hawaiians begin their days by greeting the spirits visible and invisible that move through their world. And with each sunrise, the stories stir again, of gods, goddesses, and those uncanny beings who walk between worlds. Tonight, as you wander the blurred boundaries of history and legend, you meet a gallery of immortals so mischievous, moody, and magnificent you'll think twice before dismissing any shadow as just a shadow. Mainstream historical fact: Hawaiian religion, like all Polynesian traditions, was a dazzling tapestry of gods, akua, ancestral spirits, demigods, and shapeshifters. The pantheon was never a fixed list. Instead, it was a living, changing cosmos where local gods, family guardians, and cosmic forces mingled and sometimes bickered. Everyone knew the great names: Pele, the fire goddess whose rages shaped the islands; Lono, bringer of rain and peace; Ku, the fierce god of war; and Kanaloa, mysterious lord of the sea. But ask any elder, and you'd hear that the real action was in the stories between the big names, those tales that lived on the lips of fishermen, hula dancers, and children who listened a little too closely at night. You step up the old lava path to the rim of a crater, and the wind seems to whisper. Her story is everywhere. Her jealousy, her love affairs, her explosive tempers, and her power to create and destroy. Legend says she arrived from Kahiki, a mythical homeland, crossed the islands in search of a home, and finally settled in the fiery pit of Halema Uma'u. When the volcano rumbles, the villagers know it's her displeasure, or her playfulness. The quirky fringe. If you take a piece of lava rock from her crater, you'll suffer endless bad luck until you return it. And historians still argue whether the modern avalanche of lava return mail at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park is ancient belief or a recent invention, fueled by a few too many vacation mishaps.
You feel a hush settle as you remember the trickster Maui. Not quite a god, not quite a man, always a little of both. Maui's stories leap from island to island, across the Pacific, always a little different, always bursting with wild invention.
He's the one who fished the Hawaiian Islands up from the sea, who snared the sun with a noose of coconut fibre to slow its passage and give his mother more time to dry her kapa cloth. He's also the reason, so it's said, you can still get tangled in fishing line or lose your breakfast to a suspiciously clever minor bird. Historians still debate whether Maui was originally a real chief whose feats grew in the telling, or a mythic trickster adopted from other Polynesian islands. You pass through groves of kukui, their silvery leaves flickering in the sun, and pause by a stream where old stories say mo'o lizard spirits sometimes appear as beautiful women, sometimes as terrible monsters. Travellers in olden days would leave an offering, a flower, a splash of water, a whispered chant at certain pools and waterfalls to appease the moa and ensure safe passage. There's even a running joke: if the mo'o doesn't take your flower, you'd better sleep with one eye open. Shapeshifters are everywhere in Hawaiian legend. Sometimes they are gods. Ku turns into a feathered bird. Kanaloa glides beneath the sea as a great squid. Pele herself slips out as a white dog to walk among mortals. Sometimes, though, shapeshifters are ordinary people with a secret: a fisherman who dives as a shark, a grandmother whose owl eyes see danger coming, a child who talks to birds and knows more than he lets on. Quirky tidbit: some families still whisper about an ancestor who could become a puea owl or a puhi, and when something odd happens at night they shrug and say, the Ormakua was visiting. There are fierce debates among scholars about which stories are real, and which were inventions to scare children or keep peace between rival families. With the night marches, those ghostly processions of ancient warriors, actual memories of historical events, or elaborate warnings woven to keep people out of sacred places after dark? Was Pele's rivalry with her sister Hayake a parable about the dangers of jealousy, or a coded history of two real priestess lines vying for power? The stories resist tidy answers. They multiply and twist, living in the cracks between history and imagination. You walk the winding path through an old village where every stone and spring has a name, every curve of coastline a story. You notice how often legends slip into daily life. An unusual sunrise. Lono is smiling. A sudden storm. Kane is thirsty. A particularly stubborn fish refusing your bait. Maui must be playing tricks again. The world is alive with invisible personalities, and every odd occurrence becomes a reminder that you're never alone. You find a quiet spot beneath an oha tree, its red blossoms dusting your shoulders, and watch as an old man carves a hook from bone. He hums as he works, a melody so old no one knows the words anymore, and you realize he's telling a story without ever speaking. Maybe he's thinking of the hooks Maui used, or perhaps of a family tale so secret it can only be sung in silence. There's a comfort in knowing that not every legend needs to be spoken. Some are felt, some are hinted at in gestures or glances, some are so deeply part of the land that they become the land itself. Historians still puzzle over the origins of certain gods and spirits. Did the Mo'o come from the first settlers, who brought lizard deities from Tahiti and Samoa, or did they arise from the fears and dreams of islanders, shaped by the landscape's constant motion, water, wind, fire, and earth in endless conversation? Some stories have faded, others have fused and grown, but the result is always the same: a world where myth is as present as breath, as real as stone beneath your feet. As the day draws to a close, the shadows lengthen, and you find yourself looking at the world with new eyes. Every breeze could be a whisper from Pele. Every splash in the stream, a ripple of Maui's laughter. Every flutter of owl wings in the dusk, a reminder that the gods and shapeshifters are still out there, dancing in the places where stories and life meet. You tuck this feeling away as you return to the warmth of the fire, and the promise of more stories yet to be found, somewhere in the shifting sands of memory, where gods and mortals still wander, searching for the right listener. The night deepens, heavy with the scent of ginger and the gentle slap of waves on ancient rock. You follow a narrow path out of the village, your footsteps muffled by moss and fallen leaves, moving toward places where the ordinary rules of day do not apply. This is the hour when old Hawaiians grew quiet and doors closed a little earlier, when dogs tucked their tails and even the bravest alialai might pause before crossing a certain threshold. Tonight, you slip softly into a world haunted by the restless, echoing footsteps of the night marchers, the ghosts of ancient warriors, and the strange, shifting domain of Hawaiian ghost stories. You step off the path, heart thumping with the thrill of half-believed tales, and find yourself at the edge of a valley shrouded in mist. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows at the wrong hour, a sign, they say, that something isn't quite right. You pause, ears straining. The hush is deep, broken only by the distant sound of drums. Or is that just the pounding of your own heart? Mainstream historical fact: nearly every Hawaiian island is scattered with wahipana, legendary places where spirits are said to linger. The most famous are the night marchers, or huaka'aipo, spectral processions of armored warriors, chiefs and priests, moving along hidden trails from mountain to sea. Witnesses claim to have heard chanting, the clash of unseen spears, or the thud of hundreds of ghostly feet. Night marchers are both feared and respected. If you see their torches winding down a ridge, the proper thing is to lie face down in the dirt. Close your eyes and pray your ancestors will claim you as their own. It's the sort of advice you'd never find in a travel brochure. You creep further into the valley, feeling the weight of countless eyes. You remember stories told in whispers around the Emu fire, of travellers who strayed too far after dark and vanished, of dogs who barked at shadows and would not come home, of children found sleepwalking at dawn with muddy feet and no memory of the night before. There's a quirky tidbit. Some say that sprinkling salt around your bed will keep wandering spirits at bay. Others insist a strip of tie leaf behind your ear works better than any prayer. Historians still argue whether the night marcher legends record ancient memories of real warrior processions, funeral rites, temple dedications, or the movements of high chiefs protected by strict kapu, sacred laws, or if they emerged simply to explain the unexplainable strange lights, footsteps, and the deep, uncanny hush of certain valleys. Some suggest that the stories served as a way to keep children, and perhaps adults, safely at home after dark, away from the hidden dangers of cliffs. sudden floods, and places marked by old taboos. You continue on, the wind rising and falling like a sigh, and the landscape seems to shift with every step. The stones feel strangely warm, the trees lean in close, and a line of ants crossing your path makes you pause. Everyone knows that when even the insects act oddly, something unseen might be near. You pass a ruined heiau, its stones cold in the moonlight, and feel a chill trace your spine. In some stories, these ancient temple grounds are still alive with spirits, and the careless or the disrespectful risk more than just a scare. But Hawaiian ghost stories aren't all dread. There's a sense of humour woven through, an understanding that the world of spirits is complicated and sometimes even friendly. Some tales speak of the Green Lady, a ghostly figure in tattered leaves who protects lost children and guides them back to safety, though woe to anyone who litters in her forest. Other stories tell of mischievous Omakua, family guardians, who appear as animals in dreams to offer warnings or play harmless pranks. A sudden wind slamming a door, a gecko chirping at the punchline of a joke, a fish that always seems to escape your net. You settle for a moment near a stone said to mark a forbidden path, watching as the fog slides over the grass like a living thing. The night is thick with possibilities. You recall a story of a chief who mocked the spirits, and woke to find his footprints leading in circles around his own house, never able to leave until he made amends with a long-forgotten ancestor. There's a playful side to even these warnings, a reminder that in Hawaii ghosts aren't just to be feared, but respected, even teased a little if you're feeling brave. Scholars still debate which Hawaiian ghost stories are truly ancient, and which were shaped by later encounters, first with other Polynesian migrants, then with Chinese, Japanese and Portuguese settlers, each bringing their own beliefs about restless souls and haunted places. Some argue that the night marchers are uniquely Hawaiian, others point to similar processions in Samoa or Tonga. Whatever their origin, the stories grow and shift, like shadows in the moonlight, always just a step ahead of certainty. The hour grows late, and the valley is utterly silent. You feel the urge to turn back, to head for the comfort of the fire and the living world, but something keeps you rooted. Maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's a stubborn streak, or maybe it's the sense that tonight the past is closer than usual. You make a silent promise, to remember, to walk respectfully, to leave an offering, if only a whispered word of thanks for the spirits who keep watch. As you finally retrace your steps, the wind at your back, you realize how much richer the night has become. Every sigh of air, every rustle in the undergrowth, every glimmer of distant torchlight holds a new layer of meaning. Ghost stories, you understand now, aren't just about fear, they're about connection, to place, to family, to the vast river of memory that runs through these islands, carrying with it not just the living, but all those who have ever walked these paths. When you step back into the warm ring of firelight, you're different, just a little more alert, a little more respectful, maybe a little more careful not to whistle after dark. And as you close your eyes to rest, you carry with you the hush of ancient footsteps, a warning and a blessing whispered in the language of night. As dawn breathes gold across the treetops, and the valley mists curl away, you follow the slow trickle of a stream deeper into the heart of old Hawaii, seeking the faintest hints of a people more mysterious than any ghost or god. The Menehune, these legendary folk, the secret builders and shadow crafters, drift through every child's imagination and linger at the edges of memory like footprints that appear only at dawn. If you're lucky and very quiet, you might just catch the distant sound of laughter, stone tapping on stone, or the echo of a song no ordinary ears have heard. You've heard 100 stories about the Menehune, each more outrageous than the last. Some say they're a race of little people, no taller than your knee, with sharp eyes and clever hands. Others whisper they're simply the memories of an older people, driven to the wild valleys and rain-soaked forest by newcomers with bigger canoes and louder voices. Mainstream historical fact: scholars have found ancient fish ponds, terraces and irrigation ditches across Hawaii, so finely built that tradition often credits their creation to the Menehune, sometimes said to build entire structures in a single moonlit night. As you trudge along a muddy path, slipping now and then on slick stones, you hear the refrain, "Don't speak too loudly, or the Menehune will vanish." Locals wink and nudge each other, spinning tales of waking up to a new pond where there was none the day before, of mysterious drums at midnight, or of unfinished walls that crumble to dust if you peek too soon. Quirky tidbit: there's a stone wall on Kauai, stretching for miles, called the Menehune Ditch. Legend says it was built in one night, but only after the villagers agreed to lock themselves indoors and never spy on the workers. If anyone so much as glanced outside, the Menehune would drop their tools and flee, never to return. You slip into a fern-hung clearing and stare in awe at an old stone structure, lichen-kissed and half-lost to the undergrowth. Was this truly made by hands no bigger than yours in the hours between sunset and cock? Or is it a memory made solid? A way for later Hawaiians to explain the astonishing feats of those who came before. Historians still argue whether the Menehune legends describe a real people, the original settlers displaced by Polynesian arrivals, or a kind of wishful storytelling, a way to fill gaps in memory with a flourish of magic. But the magic is real enough for anyone who grows up here. Children are told to leave a little food on a rock at night, just in case the Menehune pass through, hungry from a night of building. Parents warn against whistling in the woods, or mocking the Menehune for fear of sudden mischief, knotted fishing lines, tangled hair, or missing slippers that turn up in the oddest places. There's a running joke that if you can't find your tools in the morning, you must have left them out on Menehune night. You move quietly along a stream, eyes peeled for tiny footprints, or the glint of a stone adze in the dawn light. There's a story about a boy who once watched a Menehune wedding, a parade of little folk in leaf cloaks and flower crowns, dancing beneath the moon. He was told never to speak of it, and though he kept the secret, he woke the next day with a perfect lee on his pillow and the best luck of his life. Quirky tidbit: in some villages, the old-timers say that if your taro patch thrives unexpectedly, it's because the Menehune are using it for moonlight dances when you're not looking. As you hike deeper into the lush interior, with sunlight filtering through layers of green, you wonder, are the Menehune the lost ancestors of Hawaii, the echoes of early settlers who slipped away as new waves of migration arrived? Or are they the collective imagination of a people who cherish the idea that magic can be found in every stone and stream? Historians still debate whether the word Menehune even existed before Western contact, or if it grew in the telling, shaped by outside fascination with the exotic and the unknown. You pause at the edge of an ancient fish pond, the water glassy and silent. The legend here says the Menehune built the pond in one night to help a starving village, vanishing before sunrise so no one could thank them. You kneel, peer into the water, and almost expect to see a line of tiny faces grinning back. Instead, a fish jumps, and the spell is broken. Maybe the real gift of the Menehune is the permission to believe, to leave space in your world for the unexplained, for the possibility that something wonderful and strange is always just beyond your sight. As you wander back through the morning's hush, you notice the way people treat the land with caution, reverence, and a little superstition. Stones are left where they lie, paths are walked with respect, and even jokes about the Menehune are told softly. The stories aren't just about who built what or when. They're about a way of seeing, a reminder that mystery isn't something to solve, but something to cherish. Scholars still sift through clues, ancient bones, old legends, half-forgotten words, wondering what's history and what's hope. Maybe, in the end, the Menehune are exactly what they need to be. The builders of wonder, the keepers of lost skills, the friends of anyone who remembers to look closely at the world. And as the sun rises fully, chasing the last of the dew from the ferns, you carry a quiet thrill, a sense that at any moment the ancient builders might return, just for a heartbeat, to finish what they began. Midday heat shimmers over the taro fields, and you drift toward the high, cool shade of a royal compound, where voices ripple through the still air, measured, melodic, almost hypnotic. Here among the carved wooden posts and feathered standards of the alilai, you find yourself drawn into a world where words are weighed like gold, and a single misplaced phrase could change a destiny. You've entered the rarefied realm of royal bards and forbidden chants, where stories become secrets, and secrets are a form of power. You notice at once that this is not the loose, playful storytelling of the village fire. This is ceremony, a careful, layered performance, where every word is chosen with a precision that borders on the obsessive. Bards haku mele stand at the side of the alilai, their voices weaving chants that trace the lineages of kings and queens back through countless generations. A single genealogy chant, if unravelled, might fill a night and half the next day. Mainstream historical fact. Hawaiian society was built on strict class divisions, and the right to tell, hear, or even remember certain stories was determined by rank, kinship, and the favour of the chiefs.
Some chants were so sacred, kapu, that uttering them outside of ritual could bring swift punishment. Stories as dangerous as forbidden weapons, the air here is thick with tension and awe.
You watch as a bard performs the auri, voice rising and falling in a pattern older than memory, the syllables curling like smoke around the listeners. Each name, each deed, is more than history. Its magic claim. Quirky tidbits. Some bards learn to recite whole epics backwards, a trick both to keep them secret and to prove their mastery. The chiefs, amused, might test them at feasts with a whispered challenge. Recite the storm that carried our ancestor to this land. But start with the last wave.
Failure was embarrassing. Success, legendary.
You notice too the guarded glances. Not everyone is welcome to hear every chant. The most sacred stories are performed only for the alilai, behind closed doors or deep in hidden valleys. Even the hula dancers who interpret these stories in movement must sometimes veil their faces, dancing for the spirits and the chiefs, but not for common eyes. The bards themselves carry the weight of these secrets, living libraries half feared and wholly respected, trusted with the knowledge that can bind or break a dynasty. Historians still argue whether these forbidden chants have truly been lost, or if they survive, disguised in harmless lullabies or common proverbs. Some scholars believe that, after the old religious system was overthrown, bards and priests hid their stories in plain sight, altering names, blending histories, or turning chants into songs for children, so that no one would notice what was being preserved. Others claim that entire branches of legend simply vanished, erased out of fear or reverence, leaving only faint echoes in the historical record. You lean in closer, listening as the bard's voice twists from triumph to tragedy, recounting a forgotten battle where a single mistake changed the fate of an island. In this world, memory is a double-edged sword. To remember is to honour, but to remember the wrong thing, or to speak out of turn, can bring disaster. There are whispered tales of bards punished for sharing too much, of rival chiefs bribing storytellers to invent new genealogies, or to erase inconvenient truths. Sometimes you catch a flicker of rebellion, a sly joke, a hidden meaning, a subtle dance move that only the elders truly understand. Quirky tidbit, the best bards are also masters of improvisation. If a chief is displeased, the bard might slip in a line that flatters him, comparing his wisdom to Lono or his courage to Ku, turning potential disaster into delight. But slip up, and you might find yourself tasked with composing an apology chant, one that could take weeks to perfect, or else risk losing your place at court. You sense, as the chant ends, a collective exhale. The listeners nod, the chief smiles faintly, and the bard bows low, sweat glistening on his brow. For a moment, the secrets of the kingdom are safe, wrapped in syllables and shadows. Yet even as the performance fades, you catch the feeling that something important lingers just out of reach. A truth half heard, a story glimpsed only in the periphery. Historians still debate the fate of these secret traditions in the wake of upheaval. The arrival of missionaries, the overthrow of the Kapu system, the decline of the alii. Did the last bards take their chants with them to the grave, or did they find ways to pass them on, coded in new forms?
There's no easy answer. All you know is that every whispered tale, every careful gesture, every fragment of a chant carries the weight of generations. Proof that, in Hawaii, to speak a story is to risk everything, but also to keep the world alive.
As the afternoon wanes, you step away from the royal compound, your ears ringing with the echoes of forbidden words. The world outside feels lighter, easier, but also somehow emptier. You understand now why some stories are guarded so fiercely, why in a world built on memory, forgetting can sometimes be the only safe path.
You follow the path back to the common fields, grateful for the chance to listen, and carrying with you the hush of secrets still waiting to be heard. You wander out of the compound, following the sound of surf and the scent of ironwood needles baking in the sun. The air is thick with the feeling that every stone you pass, every root and ripple of ground, has a story just out of reach. Tonight you let your feet take you along the old trails, seeking out the silent witnesses to Hawaii's vanished legends, the sacred sites, ancient carvings, and stones that have outlasted memory itself. Your first stop is a heiau, a stone temple rising quietly from the green, its terraces worn smooth by generations of feet and rain. The walls are stacked with impossible precision, stones fit so tightly that no blade of grass can grow between them. Mainstream historical fact, Hawaiians built hundreds of heiau across the island's temples dedicated to war, harvest, healing, and the honoring of ancestors. Each one is a kind of living library holding the unspoken memory of ceremonies, chants, and the thousands of untold stories that have never left their walls. You run your hand along the rough stone, feeling the chill of shade and the warmth where the sun has struck. Some say these places are charged with mana sacred power, each rock a vessel of forgotten prayers. You pause where the shadows deepen, sensing the way a hush settles over the land. Here, you're told, only the initiated once entered. Only the bravest chanted the names that could awaken the old gods. Quirky tidbit, in certain heiau there are hidden chambers or speaking stones, said to murmur answers if you press your ear against them and ask the right question in the right way. You move on, skirting a low wall where the ferns reclaim each fallen rock. The trail leads you to a patch of lava field carved with petroglyphs, stick figure dancers, swirling spirals, long canoes, and footprints pressed deep into stone. You try to read their silent script. What did they mean? A record of battles, a map of family, a plea to the gods. Historians still argue whether these petroglyphs are literal or symbolic, a historic record or a kind of dream language. Some are so old that no one knows their meaning, just that they mark places where something important once happened. A sudden breeze catches a stand of kukui trees, their silvery leaves whispering over a stone shaped like a giant seat. A family sits here, passing around poi and sweet fish, children daring each other to touch the stone's cold side. You overhear a tale half warning, half riddle, that this rock is the seat of a Moa guardian. If you sit without permission, the moa will slip into your dreams and make you forget your own name. There's laughter, but everyone stands a respectful distance away. It's one of those moments when you realize legends don't have to be spoken aloud to linger.
You follow the coast to a tidal pool where old women gather seaweed, their baskets bobbing beside them. One points to a cluster of rocks, worn smooth by the tides, and tells you in a hush that these are the footprints of Hawaiian, Pele's sister, left behind when she crossed the island to rescue her lover.
Historians still debate whether these stories grew to explain the uncanny shapes in the stone, or if the land itself inspired the legends first. The sea whispers its own secrets, filling the spaces where memory has faded.
You find another kind of story in the petroglyph fields. Sometimes the carvings are footprints pressed deep in a trail that winds over the black stone. Children race along the path, laughing and skipping, as if following the journey of ancestors whose names are only remembered by the earth. There's a quiet magic in knowing you're stepping where so many have gone before, tracing legends that have no ending, only a promise to keep moving forward. Quirky tidbits: certain stones are said to grow over time, Pohakuia creeping higher out of the ground as if to remind the living that the old gods are never really gone. Some families leave offerings at these stones, a lei, a bit of sweet potato, a whispered prayer for luck or forgiveness.
No one knows when the tradition began, or why some stones are chosen and others left alone. Historians still debate whether the stones are truly growing, or whether it's just the slow reveal of time, wind and rain.
The sun dips lower, turning the landscape to gold. You pass by ancient fish ponds, lokaria, where the walls curve gently into the water, an engineering marvel that once fed whole communities. The elders say the ponds remember every story, the building, the feasts, the nights when the stars danced on the surface and the fish jumped high enough to seem like spirits rising. You kneel and trace the edge of the wall, feeling the old energy that still clings, the sense that even in silence, the land remembers more than it tells. As dusk settles, you rest on a flat stone with a view of both sea and mountains, the sky blushing with the last light. The world is full of stories, some as obvious as the carvings beneath your fingers, others as hidden as the echo in a speaking stone. You realize that loss is not always the end. Sometimes what is lost only waits, carved in rock, whispered by waves, ready for anyone who cares to listen. You close your eyes, letting the wind and water carry you, and feel for a moment the comfort of knowing that even in silence, legends endure. You walk inland as night falls, fireflies rising and the stars winking awake, guiding you toward a moment that would reshape everything. The arrival of missionaries and the written word. If ever there was a tide that swept the legends of Hawaii into strange new waters, it was this, when paper and ink washed ashore, and the memory of 1,000 generations faced both salvation. The world tilts subtly beneath your feet as you step into this era, a time when storytellers found themselves in the balance between the old magic of voice and the sharp permanence of writing. You settle in a clearing, the distant sound of church bells mingling with the soft beat of pahu drums. It is the early 1800s. The Elias sit in council with men in coats and starched collars who speak of God and salvation, who promise the gifts of literacy and a different kind of immortality. Mainstream historical fact. In 1820, American Protestant missionaries arrived in Hawaii, and within a generation, the Hawaiian language was transformed from oral tradition to written text. The first Hawaiian alphabet, developed by missionary linguists and native scholars, quickly spread through the islands, making the people among the most literate in the Pacific by the mid-19th century. But every gain brings a loss. You feel the hush as old storytellers are invited, sometimes commanded to set their tales to paper. Some welcome the chance. Others hesitate, fearing that stories written down lose their soul, that chants without breath become brittle as old tapper. Historians still argue whether the written word was a blessing or a curse for Hawaiian legend. Did it preserve what might have faded, or hasten the forgetting by making living memory seem suddenly old-fashioned? You walk among the shadows of teachers, preachers, and alley debating the future. Schools sprout up beside the old heiau, and children who once learned by listening now learn by reading. Quirky tidbit: within decades, more Hawaiian language newspapers were published per capita than almost anywhere in the world. In the margins of these papers you find legends, snippets, riddles, ghost stories, and even family jokes, side by side with sermons and shipping news. Yet not every tale makes the leap from voice to page. Some stories are lost in translation, their meaning slipping away as they pass through the filter of English-speaking teachers or the cautious pens of Christianized chiefs. Chants that once filled the night are left out, considered too heathen, too wild, too deeply woven with the old gods and forbidden rituals. In the rush to record, certain stories are chosen, others quietly set aside, their secrets growing faint in the silence. You sit by a lamplight and listen to a kapuna, her hands trembling as she reads aloud from a Bible, her voice blending the rhythms of English and Hawaiian. She tells you, in a hush, how some words never found their way into the new books. A favorite joke among the elders: you can write down the story, but you can't write down the wink, the little gestures, the secret meanings tucked in a laugh or a glance remain off the page, safe in the shadows for those who know where to look. Historians still debate the motives and the methods. Did the missionaries understand what they were erasing, or were they simply eager to save souls? Did the chiefs give up the old stories willingly, or under duress? Was the explosion of printing a shield for culture, or the beginning of its undoing? The answer, as always, is tangled and shifting, like the currents that sweep between islands. You flip through a weathered Hawaiian language newspaper, squinting at faded type. A poem about a shark god shares space with a prayer for rain. In another column, a child's riddle sits beside a genealogy that stretches back to the time before islands. Some voices shine out daring, clever, determined to slip old ways into the new world. Quirky tidbit: Hawaiian newspapers became a battleground for secret resistance, with hidden jokes, sly code words, and veiled protests embedded in what looked like ordinary announcements. We wander the new classrooms hearing children recite, not from memory, but from the neat rows of letters and words on a blackboard. Their voices sound proud, eager, but you wonder what is left unsaid. What songs are only hummed in the privacy of home? What stories still wait for a night with no paper, no ink, only firelight and trust? The sun rises on a changed world. The language survives, vibrant on the page, but somehow different, flatter, less mischievous, missing the secret glances and half-laughed jokes. The old stories are caught in amber, preserved yet stilled, waiting for someone to breathe them back to life. Historians still search the archives, hoping to find lost legends hidden in the pages, or to glimpse the vanished world behind the text. You feel, as you close an old book and step outside, that the greatest stories are those that learn to hide between the lines, in the cracks of silence, in the living hearts of those who remember. As you wander back down the trail, you sense the tug between old and new, the bittersweet gift of memory captured and memory lost, and the deep hope that what matters most can never truly be erased. You stroll through the haze of early morning, a rhythm of footsteps echoing off lava rock, and the click of bamboo doors, swinging open one by one. The air is honeyed with plumeria and wood smoke, and you can almost hear music pulsing through the soil itself. Today you follow the path of songs that survived, hula and Malay, tracing how legends once forbidden to be spoken aloud learned to move and breathe in the sway of hips, the snap of fingers, and the shimmer of voices rising in secret harmony. The village is stirring with anticipation. At the far end of the beach, dancers gather, smoothing their pawu skirts and tucking blossoms behind their ears. The kumu hula, the revered dance teacher, stands at the center, eyes sharp and kind, voice low and sure. There is no written script. Instead, each movement and note is a vessel, carrying stories too precious, too subversive, or too sacred for paper and ink.
Mainstream historical fact. When the missionaries banned hula in 1830, many believed the ancient dances would vanish. Yet, through whispered lessons, clandestine gatherings, and careful adaptation, hula not only survived, but became a resilient form of living memory.
You kneel by the fire, watching as the kumu hula traces a line in the sand, with a tie leaf marking the space where the dance will bloom. A drummer's hands hover over the pahu, and as the first beat falls, it is as if the old gods have returned. A chant unfurls, merely telling of love, loss, volcanic fury, and the clever tricks of gods and mortals alike. The dancers move with deliberate grace, a hand shaping a wave, a foot tracing the course of a river, a turn mimicking the swift flight of a pewau. The choreography isn't just art, it's encrypted storytelling, a living archive of the legends that laws and time tried to silence. Quirky tidbit. For years, some families maintained shadow hulas, dances only performed deep in the forest or behind closed doors, where curious eyes couldn't see. These secret performances became a game of hide and seek with authority, a wink between generations. The lyrics too grew sly, meant to sound innocent to outsiders, but packed with hidden meaning. There are even tales of hula masters teaching false dances to confuse anyone trying to catch them in the act. You notice the faces of the audience, wrapped with recognition, as the melee glides through familiar names and coded histories. Here, a movement means more than what you see. It's the flutter of a goddess's cape, the sly smile of a trickster, or the warning call of a distant war. Historians still argue whether the dances preserved the true stories or if they became their own new legends, shaped by the pressures of secrecy and rebellion. Was the purpose survival, or was it quiet resistance, the way to keep the fire of tradition burning beneath the ashes? You catch the eye of a young dancer, her brow furrowed in concentration, as she matches the older women step for step. She'll remember this dance for the rest of her life, each gesture an heirloom, each chant a whisper from ancestors she never met. The kumu hula's voice rises, drawing the story to a close, and for a moment, the whole village holds its breath. The air shimmers, the past is as real as the present, and everyone is part of the story now. After the last note fades, the dancers return to the circle, breathless and glowing. You hear laughter and sighs of relief, the soft thump of drums still echoing. A child asks about a movement she's never seen before, and an elder leans in close, sharing a story in a hush, so soft only the curious hear. There's a running joke that every hula is a riddle. If you don't know the answer, just keep dancing. The story will catch you sooner or later. As the day grows, you join a small group heading into the shade, where another kumu tells how some mele were disguised as love songs to avoid suspicion. Still others were prayers, slipped into lullabies, or transformed into playful games for children. You realize that nothing is wasted. Every word, every step, every rhythm has a place, a double meaning, a hidden root. Some mele recall the gods in their most human moments. Pele's jealousy, Maui's boasting, Laka's gentle guidance, and the dancers' bodies remember what can't be written. Historians still pore over the old songbooks, trying to decipher meanings, hunting for lost lines. But in the end, the living tradition remains just out of reach of paper, thriving in the laughter, tears, and sly winks of every performer. You feel the legacy in your bones, the courage it took to keep these stories moving, even when silence seemed the safer choice. As night falls and the village gathers around the fire once more, the hula returns, new and old all at once. You feel a comfort settle over you, the assurance that as long as there are dancers, the stories will never truly disappear. Every footstep, every note, every flourish is a rebellion against forgetting, a celebration that the legends, though lost on some lips, still move beneath the skin of Hawaii. Night thickens, and the fire's glow shrinks to a red core as the villagers slip quietly into their homes. You sit on the cool veranda, lulled by the gentle strum of a slack-key guitar and the far-off shush of waves. This is the hour of the slow hush, a time in Hawaiian history when voices dropped, legends faded, and silence became both shield and wound. The age of silence and censorship had begun, settling like heavy dew on the islands, and muffling the old stories one by one.
You peer into the darkness, sensing what it must have felt like for families who for generations had sung, danced and argued over mopoliolo, now forced to keep their words behind closed lips. Laws, religion and the steady gaze of foreign authority all pressed in, narrowing the world.
Mainstream historical fact: after the arrival of missionaries and the overthrow of the kapu system, many traditional Hawaiian practices, including hula, chants and even the speaking of the language itself, were suppressed by law, custom and social pressure. Elders who had once been the loudest voices at the fire now shushed children or redirected them to proper English tales.
You hear it in the stories that don't get told. A grandmother's hands poised for a chant, then folding quietly in her lap. A child's question met with a glance, and a quick change of subject. Quirky tidbit: some families developed coded ways of referring to old legends, using nicknames or odd metaphors, like calling Pele the Lady in Red, or referring to gods as the old bosses, to avoid scrutiny while still holding on to fragments of the forbidden.
The silence isn't just external. You feel it inside. The awkwardness of not knowing a word. The ache of realizing that an entire piece of your family history is missing. Children grow up hearing more about Abraham Lincoln than Maui, more about distant lands than the spirit in the stream behind their own house.
Historians still argue whether this era of enforced forgetting was more damaging than the arrival of the written word, or whether it simply made people more creative in hiding and remembering the old stories. You notice the strange resilience that emerges when speech is dangerous. Secret gatherings are held at night, away from prying eyes. A mother braids her daughter's hair, and as she works, slips in a line or two of forbidden chant, disguised as a lullaby. An uncle takes the boys fishing, and under the guise of teaching them to cast a net, passes on a genealogy or a cautionary tale about breaking taboos. You sense the defiance in every shared glance, every quick smile, every story told by accident, over tarot, and you hear the echoes of pain as well. Young people punished in school for speaking Hawaiian, elders laughed at for old ways, families split over which traditions to keep and which to let go. Some legends slip away not because of official censorship, but because the pain of loss makes remembering too hard. There are stories of whole villages agreeing to never speak of certain gods again, as if silence could make the heartache easier. Historians still debate how much of the old knowledge truly vanished. Did it simply go underground, waiting for a safer season? Or did some stories fade completely, their last keepers taking them to the grave?
There's a deep sadness in realizing that some songs, some dances, some ways of speaking may never return, like rare shells lost beneath the shifting sands.
Yet even in silence, life finds cracks to grow. You notice that families keep odd traditions with no explanation, leaving a bowl of pie at the crossroads, never pointing at a rainbow, setting an extra place at the table just in case. Each act is a seed of memory, a little gesture of hope that someday someone will ask the right question and the old stories will bloom again. You settle into the hush, listening to the sounds that survive, the laughter of children, playing a game with rules no adult seems to remember, the sigh of wind that might be an ancestor's blessing, the odd word or phrase that slips out when an elder is half asleep. It's not much, but it's enough. A thin thread of connection that runs through even the darkest nights. As you drift towards sleep, you realize that silence too can be a story. It's a story of endurance, of adaptation, of the stubborn refusal to forget even when remembering is hard. In the morning, voices will rise again, legends will creep back, and the hush will lift, if only for a moment. And until then, the old stories wait in the dark, listening, patient, knowing their time will come again. You awaken to the soft patter of rain on pandanus leaves, the world washed clean and shimmering, and realize not all is lost, not even in the quietest times. Even as legends slipped underground and voices hushed, a clever current of coded stories ran beneath the surface, keeping the old magic alive. Today, you play detective, hunting for those legends, hidden in plain sight, in children's games, place names, riddles, and everyday sayings that at a glance seem ordinary but hold the bright threads of memory. The morning is thick with routine. Aunties swap news at the market, fishermen haul in their catch, and children tumble across wet grass in a wild, laughter-laced game. You linger watching the children's play, and notice the odd rules counting in Hawaiian, singing songs that don't match the English their teachers demand, chasing one another along lines drawn in the sand that map the contours of a valley, or the path of an ancient journey.
Quirky tidbit. There's a traditional Hawaiian game, ulu manaika, where players roll discs between stakes, but some say it's really a retelling of an old battle, with every roll a reenactment of a long-forgotten victory. You stroll through town, reading street signs and shop names. At first they look like geography. Wailuku, water of destruction, Kanohe, bamboo man, Koloa, long hill.
But behind each name a legend waits, if you know how to listen. Place names become shorthand for entire stories, sometimes reduced to a word, sometimes disguising a warning, a boast, or a bit of sly advice. Mainstream historical fact Hawaiian place names encode genealogies, mythic events, and ancient instructions for living. Each one is a clue, an invitation to dig deeper. You stop at a stone wall, listening to a grandmother teaching her grandson a riddle. The answer isn't just clever, it's a fragment of an old chant, a way to remember a god's favourite food or a trickster's hiding place. What walks on one leg in the morning, hides in a shell at noon, and dances at sunset? The boy giggles, guessing wrong. But his grandmother smiles and repeats the answer with a wink. You realize that the legend lingers, even if the story is never told in full. Historians still argue whether these codes and clues were a conscious act of resistance, a way to keep the old ways alive when open speech was forbidden, or if they simply reflect the Hawaiian love of wordplay and layered meaning. Was every lullaby a memory, every proverb a mask? Some scholars insist the answer is yes. Everyday language became a tapestry of hidden stories, a way to outwit forgetfulness itself. You notice how the local proverbs, olelo, no, are rich with metaphor and double meanings. No rain, no rainbow, someone shrugs, but the words carry a lesson about patience, loss, and the return of light after hardship. Helmika puolo, someone else says, go with a bundle, but the phrase is also a quiet nod to hospitality, generosity, and the practice of always bringing something to share, just as the old heroes did in the legends. You pass a schoolyard, where a teacher leads a class in a song that sounds like nonsense, but to those who know is a hidden genealogy, a roll call of ancestors whose names must never be forgotten. There's a running joke that the best way to learn history is to listen when adults think you aren't paying attention. If you want to know the real story, ask Tutu when she's cooking. You join a family lunch, and as you eat, you notice the odd rituals, a pinch of salt flung over a shoulder, a blessing muttered before the first bite, the story of a talking fish retold as a funny warning not to eat too fast. Everything is woven together. Ordinary, even games of hide and seek become echoes of legends about gods who vanished and reappeared, or battles fought in secret under new moons. Historians still puzzle over how much of this coded knowledge has survived, and how much has slipped away for good. Did children truly know the stories behind every game? Or did they simply play because it was fun? Are the old words spoken out of habit? Or do they hold more meaning than anyone suspects? There's a bittersweet thrill in not knowing the sense that something precious may still be there, just waiting for the right moment, or the right question. As the day draws on, you find yourself paying closer attention. The old woman sweeping her porch hums a tune with a rhythm that matches an ancient chant. The fisherman names each wave with a half-joking, half-serious respect for the gods of the sea. The quiet man at the bus stop tells a joke that makes the children giggle and the elders nod with knowing eyes. All around, the coded stories persist, not as relics but as living, breathing acts of memory. You settle in for the evening, the rain still tapping at the eaves, and think about how legends never really disappear. They slip into the cracks of daily life, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone, maybe you, maybe a child tomorrow, to ask the question that brings them back into the light. Late afternoon drapes the island in a soft gold, and you drift toward the edge of a quiet library, old papers crackling beneath your fingertips, the air tinged with dust and longing. This is the domain of seekers, scholars, collectors, and curious souls, both local and foreign, racing the clock to gather whatever fragments of the old stories remain. Here, you eavesdrop on the first desperate attempts to gather, translate, and preserve Hawaiian legends before they vanish, for better or worse. You watch a young Hawaiian boy sitting at the feet of his grandfather, reciting a genealogy so intricate it sounds like music. Next to them, an American scholar scribbles furiously in a notebook, frowning at every unfamiliar word. It's a scene that plays out across the islands in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. One generation living in memory, the other trying to freeze memory on the page. Mainstream historical fact. As the 1800s turned to a handful of Hawaiian and foreign collectors, people like David Mallow, Samuel Kamakaua, Martha Beckwith, and Mary Karina Pukui began to write down the chants, proverbs, and stories they could find, sometimes recording as much confusion as clarity. The race is fraught with mishaps. Some stories are jotted down by outsiders with little understanding of context, missing the humour, the subtlety, or the tone. Some scholars arrive with grand ideas, ready to fit every legend into tidy Western categories. Gods are gods, heroes are heroes, and if a story doesn't match, it gets trimmed or misunderstood. There's a quirky tidbit. One early collector insisted that Maui must be the same as the Greek Prometheus, and wrote a whole treatise arguing the point, much to the quiet amusement of Hawaiian elders who knew Maui was never quite that simple. You slip through a maze of shelves and scattered papers, watching as local Hawaiian scholars push back, insisting on nuance, correcting spellings, debating what should be shared with outsiders and what should remain private. Some stories are withheld out of respect for family, others are altered to hide secret meanings. There's a friendly rivalry, sometimes heated, between those who want to save every scrap and those who fear too much exposure will strip the legends of their spirit. Historians still argue whether the first great collectors did more harm or good. Did they save legends that would have faded with the last storytellers? Or did their translations and edits flatten living tales into mere curiosities? Losing the music and the mischief, was it better to write a story down imperfectly, or to risk letting it vanish altogether? You linger at a table where two kupuna whisper in Hawaiian, their hands moving in the rhythm of an old chant. Their voices are low, and you sense their uncertainty. Should this be shared or kept? What will become of it once it leaves the family's mouth and finds its way into a book? You realize that every act of preservation is also an act of choice. What to include, what to hide, which words to translate, and which to leave mysterious. As you move deeper into the library, you find boxes of old field notes and brittle tape recordings. A single phrase, half a chant, a piece of a song, a nickname for a god, can become a lifeline, a thread to tug at, until a story begins to unravel. But it's painstaking work. Legends are knotted with riddles, wrapped in jokes, sung in a rhythm that no pen can fully capture. There's a running joke among scholars that, for every answer you find, you inherit 3 new mysteries. Quirky tidbit, some stories survive only as footnotes or passing references. A line in a missionary diary about a curious local custom, a throwaway joke in a child's school essay, a fragment sung at a wedding or funeral that's so old even the singer doesn't know its origin.
You realise that the hunt for lost legends is as much about listening as it is about reading. The best collectors are those who wait for stories to reveal themselves, who honour the silences as much as the songs. Historians still debate the role of outsiders. Were they respectful collaborators or well-meaning meddlers?
And what of the local scholars, caught between 2 worlds, working to translate, protect, and sometimes even reinvent their own heritage for a new era? The library grows quieter as the sun dips lower. You sense the weight of stories pressed into every page and the loneliness of the legend still waiting to be heard. There is no final catalogue, no perfect collection, no master key that unlocks every secret. But you leave with a sense of gratitude for the imperfect heroes, those who saved what they could, knowing that even the act of trying was in itself a way of loving. You step back outside, the air cool and full of promise. Maybe the search for lost legends is never really finished. Maybe, like the best stories, it's meant to lead you forward. Always wondering, always listening, always ready to hear one more whispered secret before night falls. Evening shadows stretch long and blue across the island as you wander a path less travelled, one that leads through the ruins of old Hecho and the silent corners of memory where the gods have gone quiet. This is a place where the air hums with what's missing, a hush, a longing, a puzzle you can't quite solve. Tonight, you explore the tragedy of lost gods, deities who faded into silence, rituals broken or forgotten, and the debates that swirl around what truly vanished and what may still linger, hidden and unnamed. You pass a toppled stone altar, feeling the press of ancient prayers in the cool ground beneath your feet. The heiau, once vibrant with chants and offerings, is now overgrown. Vines coiling through the rocks, mainstream historical fact. When the kapu system fell and missionaries gained influence, hundreds of Hawaiian gods were cast aside, their names forbidden, their images destroyed. Not just the well-known Akua, Pebil, Ku, Lono, Kanaloa, but a host of lesser spirits, household gods, local guardians, and the protectors of streams, rocks, and dreams. It's not just that the gods were abandoned. Entire rituals, some spectacular, others simple, vanished almost overnight. You imagine a family, uncertain, standing at dawn, with a bowl of arb or a plated lei, unsure if anyone is still listening. Quirky tidbit, in some communities the names of gods were whispered into the sea at sunset, a last-ditch hope that the old powers would hear, even if mortals no longer dare to speak them aloud. There's a sadness in the ritual, but also a strange hope, a belief that the gods, if patient, might someday be remembered again. Historians still argue about the fate of these vanished deities. Did the gods die, as Western accounts often claimed, or did they simply retreat, becoming unnamed forces, secret companions in dreams, or the flicker of luck that saves a fisherman from a storm? Some suggest that the old rituals survive in fragments. A flower left on a rock, a whispered prayer for rain, a taboo never broken even when no one remembers the reason. The debates are passionate, full of heartbreak and pride. For every story lost, there are others that survived in disguise, folded into Christian prayers or hidden in new traditions. You find a quiet corner of the village, where an old woman sprinkles salt at her doorway every evening, never explaining why. A man mends his net and murmurs a rhyme so old, even he shrugs when asked what it means. Children are warned to never wake a sleeping dog, for fear of disturbing the guardians. Each act, each word, is a thread that might once have belonged to a god, a custom cut loose from its origin, drifting through time, half memory, half habit. Quirky tidbit. In some families, elders refuse to name the oldest gods, calling them only the first ones or the elders, claiming that names have power and forgetting is safer than remembering too loudly. There are tales of dreams where long-lost deities appear, sometimes with anger, sometimes with gentle humour, reminding their descendants not to worry so much, that silence is only another kind of story. You wander the paths of the old stories, realizing how loss shapes the way we remember. There is tragedy in the erasure, a sense that something precious has been broken, but there is also a stubborn resilience. The rituals and names may be gone, but the urge to honor, to respect, to invoke the sacred is not.
It moves in the way people care for the land, in the songs that drift down from the hills, in the tears and laughter shared at family gatherings.
Historians still debate which gods were truly lost. Some say the great gods simply changed their faces, taking on new roles or slipping into the background of new faiths. Others mourn the dozens, perhaps hundreds of minor spirits, whose names are now only question marks in old chants and half-remembered lullabies. There is even a growing movement to reclaim and restore forgotten akua, piecing together stories from fragments, listening for echoes in the old language, the old winds, the old dreams. You pause at the water's edge, the surf pulling at your toes, and whisper a greeting. Not sure who is listening, but feeling the quiet comfort of being heard. The moon rises, painting the waves with silver. For a moment you sense all the lost gods, gathering at the edges of memory, smiling, not with anger but with deep patience, waiting for someone, anyone, to call their names again. As you turn back toward the village, you realize the tragedy of lost gods is not just loss, it's the space left open for longing, for wonder, for the possibility that nothing sacred ever truly disappears. It just waits, humming softly, for the right song or the right heart to bring it home. Midnight hush settles over the island, and you drift along the edge of dreams, where shadows ripple and familiar animals move with the dignity of kings. You've reached the domain of the Omakua, the family guardians, the personal gods whose tales float half-remembered in the lull between legend and living breath. Tonight you meet them, not in books or chants, but in sudden hunches, odd encounters, and the uncanny sense that you are never really alone. You slip into a moonlit yard, just in time to see a puewao sweep low, silent as breath itself, over the sleeping village. Someone whispers, "That's our Omakua." Her grandmother sets a small bowl of poi by a lichen-draped stone. A fisherman pauses before launching his canoe, tossing the first fish back with a murmured thank you. Mainstream historical fact: the Omakua are ancestral spirits believed to take animal, plant, or even stone form. Sharks, owls, lizards, turtles, and more, serving as family protectors, advisors, and sometimes stern disciplinarians. In some families, the story of their Omakua is clear as crystal. How our ancestor became a shark to save her children from a storm, says an uncle, his eyes shining with pride. That's why we never harm a grey shark. and why one always swims near when we fish. For others, the tales are riddles, told only at funerals or in dreams, pieces of a puzzle scattered across generations. Quirky tidbit: certain families trace their line to a specific stone, said to sing or weep on important days, and there are stories of travellers who left a pebble at the shrine only to find their journey blessed, or hilariously misdirected. You join a nighttime gathering on a beach where cousins and friends swap uncanny stories. Someone insists a white dog barked a warning the night the old house caught fire. Another describes a time a gecko's call kept them awake until a flood swept through the valley. These aren't just coincidences. Each is woven into the tapestry of family myth. A missed dream, a strange wind, a chill down your neck. Sometimes it's just a goosebump. Other times it's the Omakua reminding you to pay attention. Historians still argue about the roots and reach of Omakua belief. Are they echoes of early animist traditions, unique to Hawaii, or shared with other parts of Polynesia? Did every family have one, or is it a marker of chiefly lineages and old clans? Some say that as the public gods faded, the private guardians grew stronger, offering comfort and a sense of belonging when the world outside felt alien and uncertain. You wander with the memory of those stories, noticing the way small rituals fill each day. A child scolds her friend for chasing a mole lizard. That might be my uncle. And everyone laughs, but no one takes the risk. A boy leaves a flower at the riverbank just in case the old guardian of the pool is watching. Even city dwellers keep an eye out for signs. A butterfly in the window, a persistent rain, a sweet-smelling breeze on a still morning.
Quirky tidbit: some families keep a secret name for their Omakua, never spoken outside the home, believing that calling the guardian by its true name brings blessings, or in the wrong mouth, mischief. There are stories of feasts where a sudden gust of wind upends the table and everyone laughs, agreeing it's just the Omakua's way of saying, "Don't forget your manners." You pause to think about how the Omakua remain woven into daily life. They are comfort and warning, luck and lesson, always with you, even when you forget they're there. Elders remind you, if you feel a chill at your back, say a quick hello, better safe than sorry. Historians still puzzle over the persistence of these beliefs, even after generations of change. Did they survive because they are useful, comforting, or simply because they feel true in the heart, no matter what the outside world says? As dawn threatens the dark, you sit quietly, listening for the whisper of wings, or the laughter of a gecko. You sense the presence of those who have gone before, gentle and strong, never truly lost. Perhaps it is the Omakua who have kept the deepest stories alive, carrying legends forward when louder voices faded. Or maybe, in the end, the greatest stories are the ones that are lived every day, in kindness to a stray animal, in respect for a certain tree, in a quiet moment of gratitude for protection unseen. You rise with the sun, feeling the comfort of the guardians all around, their silent strength lingering like the scent of plumeria in the air. The legends may be lost, transformed, or hidden, but the heart of the island beats on, steady, watchful, and very much alive. Sunrise gilds the ridges, and the islands seem to exhale, washed fresh with possibility. You walk through a world on the brink of awakening, not just from sleep, but from generations of silence. This is the time of the Hawaiian Renaissance, when the forgotten or forbidden stories begin to stir again, when voices grow bold enough to chant the old names in public, and when lost legends are patiently pieced together, one song, one word, one dance at a time. You hear the first notes before you see the gathering, the rhythmic slap of pearl drums, the low hum of a conch shell, the laughter of young and old alike as they prepare for a festival in the shade of spreading monkey-pod trees. The air feels charged, a sense of reclamation, pride and a gentle rebellion. Mainstream historical fact. In the late 20th century,
A cultural movement swept the islands, fueled by artists, elders, musicians, and activists, determined to revive the language, restore hula and chant, and recover the legends and customs nearly lost to time and colonial pressure. You stand at the edge of the crowd, watching as the Kumu hula directs a new generation of dancers, some learning their first steps, others returning after decades away. The stories once whispered in code are now spoken boldly, though always with a sense of respect for what was nearly erased. A young man chants his genealogy in a voice trembling with nerves and pride. A grandmother teaches a group of children the names of every wind in the valley, each name a memory, each breeze a secret handshake with the past. Quirky tidbit: at the first modern hula festivals, elders would sometimes sit in the front row and softly correct the dancers from their seats, hissing or snapping their fingers if a step was out of place or a hand gesture missed its true meaning. This playful policing became part of the fun, and the learning reminding everyone that bringing a legend back to life is as much about humility as about you slip into a language class where grown men and women recite the days of the week, singing children's songs that carry ancient echoes. For many, it's the first time hearing their own grandparents' language spoken aloud in public. The joy is mixed with sadness, a bittersweet pride at what's been reclaimed, and a longing for the generations who lived in fear of speaking the old tongue. Historians still argue whether it's possible to truly revive a legend once it's gone underground. Can a story stitched together from scraps ever feel whole again? Or does the very act of recovery create something new, something both ancient and modern? Do you notice the dedication everywhere? Families sift through old notebooks, gather with kapuna to record fading chants, or interview elders who remember only fragments, a line of song, a half-remembered proverb, a gesture used in a dance. Hula halos flourish, filling gymnasiums and parks with footwork and stories. Musicians write new songs that blend ancient legend with modern struggles, their verses humming with pride and mischief. A quirky tidbit: some new legends are invented in the spirit of the old, born of late-night storytelling sessions and wild imaginations, then woven into the larger tapestry until even elders can't remember where they came from. If you can tell it with a straight face and get 3 people to believe you, one Kumu jokes, it's a legend now. You see the challenges too. Not everyone agrees on the right way to pronounce an old name, or the correct ending for a nearly lost tale. Debates spark between halo about the steps to a hula, between scholars about the meaning of a chant. But the arguments themselves are a kind of revival, a sure sign that legends are alive again, worthy of care, interpretation, even healthy disagreement. Historians still debate which parts of the Hawaiian Renaissance are authentic, and which are beautiful inventions, responses to longing as much as to fact. But for those reclaiming their heritage, the difference matters less than the feeling of connection, the deep satisfaction of hearing a story in the language of one's ancestors. You leave the festival just as the sky flares orange, children chasing each other through the grass, their laughter layered with snatches of song. You realize that every recovered word, every remembered gesture, is a small act of healing, not just for individuals or families, but for the whole land. The old stories are not merely artifacts to be preserved, they are living rivers flowing forward, reshaping themselves, always searching for new voices to carry them on. As the day cools, you find yourself humming a tune you half remember, the melody winding through your mind like a lay. The legends lost, found, reinvented, move with you now, braided through every moment, carrying hope that what was nearly erased can become the root of something beautifully, defiantly alive. You walk into the glare of afternoon, the air heavy with the mingled scents of sea spray and frying fish, and find yourself tangled in another mystery, one that's less about what's lost and more about who gets to decide which stories survive. The islands are alive with debate and passion, the past tugged in different directions by families, scholars, politicians and poets. This is the world of contested memory, where every legend is a prize to be claimed, protected, reinterpreted, or, sometimes, quietly set aside. You pause on the lanai of a bustling community centre, where a lively gathering is in full swing. Old men with canes, teens with cell phones, kumu hula, school teachers, cultural advisors, and visiting professors, all talking at once, their voices rising and falling like waves on the reef. In the middle, an elder stands to share a story about a famous alilai. Her version is different from the one you heard last night, and different still from the version taught in local schools. Mainstream historical fact. In Hawaii, as elsewhere, the process of choosing which stories are retold, which are official, and which are left behind is ongoing and often contentious, a matter of pride, politics, and identity. You hear the arguments, sometimes gentle, sometimes heated, over the correct chant for a festival, or the most accurate genealogy for a family reunion. Some want to preserve every variant, believing that diversity is the soul of tradition. Others argue for a clear, unified version, one that can be taught and passed down without confusion. Historians still debate whether standardization helps legends survive, or whether it inevitably flattens the richness and complexity of oral culture. You notice that some stories resurface at just the right time, called forth to inspire protest or pride, to settle an argument, or to anchor a new generation in something bigger than themselves. Quirky tidbit: at one famous hula competition, two halau performed different versions of the same ancient mele, one tracing a line of chiefs through Kona, the other through Hilo. Each group convinced their story was the original. The judges, caught in the middle, declared both winners, and the rivalry became part of local law. You wander over to a group of schoolchildren rehearsing a play about Maui. Their script weaves together several stories you've heard before, some new, some old, some clearly invented for laughs. A teacher explains that no one owns the legends, but everyone is responsible for them. The performance is a riot of creativity. Maui snags the sun, then takes a selfie. Pele's lava turns into molten chocolate. The elders watching shake their heads, but there's a twinkle in their eyes after all. Every generation puts its own stamp on the old tales. You meet families who fiercely protect their own versions of stories, passing them down in hushed voices at home, but bristling when outsiders try to claim them as public domain. There's an ongoing debate about what should be shared widely and what should remain within families, halau, or certain communities. Some stories are reserved for special occasions. Others are considered kapu, sacred or forbidden to outsiders. The tension is real, but so is the love, the desire to honor the past, while making space for the present.
Historians still argue about the impact of tourism and popular media on Hawaiian storytelling. Are new retellings, movies and shows a form of revival, or do they distort and dilute what's precious? There's a running joke that every time Hollywood tries to tell a Hawaiian legend, a kupuna gets a new grey hair.
And yet some argue that even imperfect retellings keep the legends alive, offering a gateway for curious listeners to find their way to deeper truths. You listen as one woman, a poet, describes her project gathering family stories across the islands, each interview a spark, each memory a thread. She laughs. Sometimes I get 3 different versions from the same person in a single afternoon. But she treasures the contradictions, believing that the power of legend is in its ability to change, to resist final answers. A story isn't just what happened, she says. It's what we need it to be now, and what it might become next. You watch the sun sink behind the mountains, colouring the clouds with rose and gold, and realise the debate will never end. And maybe that's as it should be. In a place built on memory, forgetting is always a risk, but so is freezing a story in place. The old ones knew this, that the health of a legend lies in its retelling, its ability to move, and stretch and laugh along with its people. As you leave the gathering, the air buzzing with argument and laughter, you sense that Hawaii's lost legends are not so much gone as they are in constant motion, braided, borrowed, reinvented, and sometimes fiercely protected. And through it all, the truth pulses. Stories are alive because people care enough to argue, to remember, to challenge, and to dream. Night falls over the islands, but the world is alive, laughter rising from backyard luau's, ukulele notes drifting through open windows, and everywhere the whisper of stories old and new, threading through daily life. You move quietly now, alert for those living echoes, fragments of lost Hawaiian legends that shape the present, sometimes hidden in plain sight, sometimes showing up in ways as unexpected as a rainbow after rain. You begin on a city street, neon lights flickering above a plate lunch shop, the air fragrant with garlic shrimp and sweet bread. At a small table, 3 aunties swap stories about their youth, recalling how their grandmother never let them sweep the house after dark. It chases away the luck, one says, and you never know whose spirit you might disturb. The others nod in agreement, passing down wisdom that sounds like superstition but carries the weight of centuries. Mainstream historical fact. Many everyday customs, never stepping on a threshold, never whistling at night, greeting the ocean with a chant, are survivals of old beliefs, the practical descendants of long-ago legends. You wander into a schoolroom, where a teacher leads the class in a song about the rain. The lyrics name each wind and shower, Wekia, Moe, Nolu, each with its own personality, its own story. A child asks, "Why do we need to remember so many kinds of rain?" The teacher grins. Because every rain has a story, and every story has a lesson. Historians still argue whether these naming traditions are remnants of forgotten tales or living mythologies in their own right. For you, each word is a key to the old world, a map back to the time when every cloud carried a prophecy. You slip into a tattoo shop in Waikiki, where an artist carefully inks petroglyph designs onto a surfer's arm. The pattern tells of a family journey, canoes, fish hooks, waves, a genealogy in images. Quirky tidbit: Hawaiian tattoos, kakao, were once a living library, with each design marking a story, a rank, or a personal connection to gods or places. Some modern artists revive the ancient forms, working from scraps of legend and family lore, their ink a quiet form of resistance against forgetting. In the neighborhoods and the countryside you find other echoes, the way families gather for baby Lois, celebrating a child's first birthday as a marker of survival and luck, a tradition rooted in old rites, the way people nod towards certain hills or offer a flower at a roadside shrine, just in case. A fisherman tells you he never keeps the first fish he catches, always returning it to the sea as an offering, part habit, part legend, all belonging. You hear stories woven into food too. Poi pounded for hours with chant and laughter, lau bundles tucked with a hidden wish, the careful slicing of ahi, always with a silent prayer for abundance and thanks. In every meal, a memory. There's a running joke that you can measure how old school someone is by the number of tiny rituals they keep. Wash your hands 3 times, greet the house before entering, never argue at the dinner table, or your armakoa might get offended. Historians still debate whether these living echoes are conscious acts of remembrance, or just habits that survived because they work, because they comfort, connect, or keep people safe. But the distinction doesn't seem to matter to those who live them. For them, every echo is a gift, a way of keeping the old stories just under the surface, ready to rise whenever someone listens closely enough. You stroll along a moonlit beach, children darting at the water's edge, calling out to imaginary gods and invisible friends. Parents watch with easy smiles, and the elders, sitting in the cool sand, tell a tale or two about shark gods or stones that sing, careful to leave the ending open, as if inviting the night itself to finish the story. As you return to your bed, listening to the hum of ceiling fans and the distant hush of waves, you realize that Hawaii's lost legends aren't really gone. They live in gestures, glances, lullabies, and laughter in the way the land is touched, the food is shared, the wind is named. The living echoes are everywhere, waiting for someone, maybe you, to notice them, and in noticing to keep them alive for one more night, one more generation. A gentle night breeze sweeps over the islands as you make your way to the quiet shore, the world finally hushed and drowsy. Moonlight flickers on the waves, painting shifting silver paths across the ocean, and all around, the land seems to sigh, a soft breath at the end of a long, remembering day. You walk the familiar curve of sand, feeling the stories of 1,000 years swirl beneath your feet. Tales lost, tales found, and those still waiting for the right voice to call them home. You let your mind wander, and in the hush the legends begin to gather, faint and flickering like lanterns seen from far out at sea. You recall the old chiefs whose names still ride the wind, the trickster gods who changed the course of rivers, the builders of ponds and temples whose hands worked through the night. You remember the Minihuli's laughter echoing through the valleys, the warning steps of the night marchers, the secrets of Kahuna, and the forbidden chants sung only in moonlight. Tonight you don't chase the stories. They come to you gentle as the surf, rising in memory. You sense the presence of guardians, of vanished gods lingering at the edge of dream, of children singing old words without knowing their meaning, keeping something alive by instinct alone. Mainstream historical fact: Hawaii's legends may be battered, scattered, and transformed, but their pulse is still felt everywhere in language, custom, and the rhythms of the land itself. You pause, letting your bare feet sink into cool sand, and look out over the water. The old world and the new are never far apart here. A place name, a gesture, a recipe, a lullaby, each holds a piece of the vanished whole, waiting for the gentle work of remembering. Quirky tidbit: some say if you walk the shore at midnight and whisper a lost story to the waves, the ocean will carry it to someone in need, half a world away. Historians still debate what can truly be recovered, what is gone forever, and whether new legends can ever fill the space left behind by the old. Some mourn the losses, others celebrate the returns, but everyone agrees as long as a single story is spoken, as long as one child listens with wide eyes, nothing is ever truly lost. You feel a deep comfort in this. The legends are not just memories, they're invitations, calling each generation to add, to change, to pass on what matters most. Stories breathe because people do. Hawaii is an endless conversation between past and future, a place where every silence is thick with possibility. Every breeze carries a secret. Every stone is a page in the book of the islands. So you close your eyes, let the moonlight soften, and walk a little farther down the shore. The world blurs to a gentle hum. The sea, the wind, the distant laugh of a child, the sleepy whisper of an elder, the echo of a drum fading into dawn. You know in your bones that even the most mysterious lost Hawaiian legends are never truly gone. They live in the gentle way the night wraps around you, in the promise that every forgotten story is only waiting for a dreamer to bring it home. As you find a soft patch of sand and settle in, let your breath deepen and your muscles loosen, the last bits of tension washing away with each rhythmic roll of the waves. The island's night grows slower, quieter, each sound blending with the next, until everything wind, surf, distant music, your own heartbeat, melds into a single calming lull. The sky above is wide and generous, spangled with stars, each one a tiny memory shining through time. You might remember a story you heard as a child,
or catch the scent of flowers drifting from somewhere far down the beach, a reminder that every ending is also a beginning.
The legends, old and new, slip over you like a warm, familiar blanket, reassuring, mysterious, promising that whatever was lost can be found again in another night, another song, another soft telling. Let your mind drift gently, images fading in and out, the outline of a canoe beneath the moon, the slow turn of hula hands, a whisper of laughter behind a curtain, the shadow of an owl gliding silently overhead. Each breath brings you further from worry and closer to rest. You are safe here, wrapped in stories that have outlasted centuries, guarded by ancestors, lulled by the same waves that shaped these islands and these dreams. Let yourself drift, unmoored, content to float in this timeless space. Soon, sleep will come, soft, easy, like a tide that carries you far and gently home. The islands and their legends will keep watch until morning, holding your dreams with the same quiet care that has cradled generations before you.